I've been obsessed with all kinds of horsemen lately, so I was thinking, what if we combine the Wild Hunt from The Witcher and using the soul of the Shadow of Mordor, render it like the Patronuses from Harry Potter, all the while using a great workflow that combines the real-time power of Cascade with the real-time smoke simulation of Embergen. Inside Blender, we'll open the rider rig from the BMS Medieval pack. This will be just an emitter for smoke, so we don't need it to be super detailed. Now we get two of these rigs somehow from the asset browser, so we'll disable one and work with the other. This is my reference Harry, so I'll get rid of this. So we select everything and move it to the middle. Now we'll set him up as if he's commanding a scouting party. Let's get rid of the sword and keep the flag. We'll select the rig and change it to pose mode so that we can move the arms. And we can select the arm bone here to test if everything's working. The flag is parented to the arm, so that's good. In the side view, we'll just rotate it a little straight. Perfect. Looks fine from the front view as if he's holding it in a natural position. That's done so we can have it back in the object mode. We don't need the rig, so we'll hide it away with H, both the rider and the horse. H for hide, and away it goes. Now let's address the elephant in the room. First, let me just quickly get the flag back in his hands properly. There we go. Okay, so how the heck do we animate this static mesh of a cloth? Well, we get rid of it and we replace it. Same for the cape in the edit mode. We select vertex, press L, that selects the cape, and we get rid of it. Now this shield is floating, no worries, we'll just select it and tuck it nice and well at the backside. Perfect. Now we get our capeless, flagless rider. Let's fix this. We open the asset browser once more and we select Cascade. So Cascade is a real-time cloth simulation library that I've created, and it's super handy. It's a collection of alembics that I've simulated with natural parameters, and hundreds of them can be stacked together atop each other, all running in real time. Let's find an appropriate simulation. We've got medieval flags here. Let's make some space here, and we'll drop flag medieval low. Low pertaining to the speed of wind. And if you press space, it runs in real time. I think the speed is a little bit low, so we'll drop flag medieval high. Let's see how that works. Ooh, that's a bit too fast, isn't it? Let's try flag medieval medium. So all three flags are running side by side, and we can compare the speed and see what suits or demands the best. I think in this instance medium speed looks perfect, so we'll select the low and delete, and select high and delete. That leaves us with the medium one. So we'll select the empty, zoom into our flagpole here, shift right click to place the 3D cursor, shift S and selection to cursor. That moves it generally where it needs to be. Now we'll calibrate the rotation and orientation. In the top view, we'll rotate it like this, and in the side view, we'll align it with a pole. We can adjust the size of it a little, and this looks perfect. Let's move it down a little where it needs to be, and in the front view, we'll just rotate it like so. Now we'll drop the cape preset. It again comes with an empty. We'll zoom in into our rider again and place the 3D cursor where the cape needs to be. Shift S and selection to cursor brings the cape here again. It's a little bit small and underwhelming, so we'll increase the size a little to some respectable size. I think that looks fine. And we'll move it where the cape should be. Just some little micro adjustments. We can rotate it to show the direction of the wind as well. I think right around here is fine, because the cape has its own weight as well. We'll place one more preset with a 3D cursor at the back of the helmet again, and we bring in tattered medium. Shift S, selection to cursor. That moves our simulation where we intended to. We'll zoom it in, it's a bit bigger, so we'll just reduce the size. And here is our rider looking alive in all its glory. It's always a great sight to see these simulations working in harmony together. So we select everything and we'll export it with File, Export, and Alembic. It is important that we export in Alembic format because this is the format that contains the simulation information. Right, so our emitter is prepped now. We jump into Embergen. There's already a host of nodes set up for this fireball simulation. Right, so the first step is to disable the shape primitive emitter. Drag out a link from shapes and select import. And we define the file path from the file we saved from Blender. We've got our fireball back. What is that? There is something there, but it's not clear. Let's zoom in to see what's happening. So our mesh is right there in the middle, but the problem is it's just too small. Not to worry, we can have the master scale up to 10 and that gives us a good size there. It's a little too big, so let's tone it down just a little, about 10%. Now the domain is not covering the entirety of the mesh, so we'll increase the domain size by increasing the voxel count. 256 by 256 and the height can be 512. And enter, and we apply new resolution. The front end of the horse is cut, so we'll just increase the voxel count in y-axis and apply the resolution again. Do you notice one thing? Our mesh is animated. Look at the cape at the back. It's all running in real time, and this looks amazing. But I don't need combustion, I need colored smoke that's falling down in sort of like a dry ice fashion. We don't need the noise that's been injected into the emitter, so we'll just turn the scale down to 0, or we can just disable it. Now the smoke is a bit too much, so in the emitter volume we can decrease the smoke rate to about, let's say, 35%. And for visual clarity, let's change the color of the smoke to about tealish color right here. There we go. Now we'll bring the emission gradient all the way down, and that just tightens the smoke up with the emitter. Another thing that we now notice is that we can see the mesh of the emitter. So we can go to import node and disable render all. And that leaves us with just the smoke. Now it still looks very wispy and the form doesn't look very defined. So if you go to simulation and dissipation, we'll go to velocity dissipation and increase it to about 80%. Smoke dissipation multiplier to about 15% and smoke dissipation subtraction to 0.117%. And this really tidies up the simulation and really defines the form of the object. Vorticity intensity to 30% and large vorticity intensity to 20%. We can decrease the force of gravity to 0 and smoke weight to about 1000. We can introduce the wind in the diagonal direction by giving some numbers to X, Y, and Z axis. And we can have the wind speed to be 0.1 meters per second. And just before exporting, we upscale it to ×2 and apply the new resolution. And now you can see that this looks really well defined with the effect of a dry ice. In the export VDB node, we click export. In Blender, we'll open our shader editor and give this a new material. Switch to rendered view and add an emission shader node, which we can combine with principled volume with an add shader, like so. Now we bring in an attribute node to use this as an input for the emission shader. This way, only certain areas of volume will be able to emit rather than the entire volume. And these areas are defined by these parameters exported from Embergen, so we'll use flames as a parameter to drive the emission. Now we'll need to restrict the effect a little, so we'll do this by a color ramp node and we'll tighten it quite a bit. And you can see in the viewport that we're able to bring out some different kind of details from this. We'll adjust it a little, and in order to give the volume some color, we'll duplicate the color ramp and put it after the first color ramp, like so. We'll reset the color ramp by down arrow here and reset color ramp. This brings it to its default position, and we'll select a teal color as an emission. Probably darken it a little, and again, in order to increase the contrast, we're going to bring this a little bit closer. We'll now make a gradient of the values of this color by control clicking here, opening it and increasing the value just a little bit to make it a bit brighter. We'll shift the head to the right and repeat this process one more time. And then this is our shader setup done. For realistic terrain generation, I'm using Gaea. It's a simple node setup with mountain range feeding into erosion, and that gets fed into rock map and slope, Both of them combined with the sat map, which textures it and combines the textures into an output. The geometry of the terrain is exported by the Mesher node, and we export. I provided the horse VDB and the terrain as an asset on my Patreon, so you can grab it from there. If you want to access free light version of Cascade, you can subscribe to my free email newsletter and you'll get access to a host of other things included in my treasure chest. In Blender, we import it as an OBJ, and we bring our previously made Horsemen as a proxy to set the framing. This is because VDBs are really heavy and they wouldn't allow real-time playback, as we can see now. Setting an area light and parenting the horse mesh to an MT. This ensures that we can move the mesh around with convenience, and we can also duplicate it to see how the other horsemen would look. So we'll just place a couple here and there. This is just to see how the entire scouting party looks altogether. Now, after all this viral replication, we see that all the cloth simulations are clones of each other. They're in the same phase, which is obviously not realistic. But I've provided a randomization script, and that offsets our VDB simulations. So we paste it in the scripting space and we run it. And soon after we do, we can see that now there's a phase difference. What it essentially is doing is offsetting the frame offset of each simulation. Now, with all this set up, let's make the framing a bit more interesting by duplicating the terrain. We'll just rotate it around to see what suits our framing. We'll use the mountains as leading lines to lead the eye to the horseman. Top it off with an interesting looking sky texture. I've got a number of these sky textures handpicked and placed in my treasure chest, so feel free to check it out. I promise it'll be useful in your 3D scenes, and it's completely free. Now our framing set up, our composition dialed in, our ride is ready to be replaced by VDBs that we made with Embergen. So let's do that. In the rendered view, it's looking a bit more crowded, so I've just made a decision to reduce all of this to just 3 riders in total, and this gives it more focus on what's going on. We'll place a light inside the volume of where the eye of the horse would be, and that'll give it a bit more depth. Now we look for more camera angles for our final render by using the same proxies that we've used before, and here is the final thing. I really hope you learned a thing or two. Be sure to grab your free assets, like and subscribe if you loved it, and I'll see you in the next one. Farewell.